There's a moment in your financial life when you realize the wealthy aren't playing a different game. They're just following a rule the rest of the world never sees. A rule so simple, so quiet, and so consistently applied that it feels almost unfair once you finally understand it. It's not a loophole. It's not a secret investment product. It's not a hack. It's a behavioral formula that the wealthy follow with machine like precision, while nearly everyone else overlooks it entirely. The 5% rule. My name is Dave, and this is Dave's Dividend Lab. I make long form, boring on purpose breakdowns about the mathematics and psychology of building wealth, slowly, steadily, and predictably. If that's your style, hit like, tap subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you are on your journey. Because today, we're going to decode the rule wealthy people quietly use to turn ordinary incomes into multi decade financial momentum. The 5% rule isn't about returns. It's not about beating the market. It's not even about picking the perfect strategy. It's about something far more fundamental, controlling the one variable that dictates your trajectory more than any investment ever will: your personal spending slope. Here's the truth nobody wants to hear. Wealthy people don't get rich by earning more. They get rich by ensuring their spending grows slower than their income. Not equal, not faster, slower. And the number that separates them from everyone else is brutally consistent. They keep their lifestyle creep below 5% per year, no matter how much they earn. This is the rule that middle income earners ignore, high income earners violate, and wealthy people treat as non negotiable. Because they know something most people never discover: you don't build wealth by controlling money. You build wealth by controlling your slope. Your slope is the gap between your income and your expenses. For the wealthy, that gap widens every year. For the average person, it shrinks. The math behind the 5% rule is simple but devastating. If your spending rises at the same pace as your income, your savings rate never improves, meaning your wealth trajectory stays flat no matter how much more you earn. That's why people making 50K hours and people making 200K often end up equally stressed. Different incomes, same slope, same trap. But when the wealthy raise their lifestyle slower than their income, even by a little, the gap expands automatically. A widening gap creates free cash flow. Free cash flow creates consistent investing, and consistent investing creates acceleration. The wealthy don't build wealth through discipline. They build it through structure. They design their lives so the system works even when motivation disappears. Most people never notice this rule because lifestyle upgrades come disguised as normal progress. A better car, a nicer rental, a bigger place, a new subscription, a higher grocery bill. None of these feel reckless, but each one slightly increases your slope. And when your slope rises faster than your income, wealth becomes mathematically impossible. The wealthy understand something everyone else forgets. It doesn't matter how fast your income grows. If your lifestyle grows faster, you're getting poorer. In the next part, we'll break down the psychology behind the 5% rule, why the wealthy resist lifestyle creep, why the average person can't see the trap, and what actually happens when you permanently slow down the growth of your spending. The strange thing about the 5% rule is that wealthy people follow it almost instinctively, yet almost nobody outside their circle even realizes it exists. It's not written in books, it's not taught in school, it's not promoted by banks or advisors, and that's because the entire idea runs counter to the way the financial system expects most people to behave. Banks build their business on velocity, constant movement, constant spending, constant switching. But the 5% rule is built on the opposite: controlled stillness. The rule itself is simple: never let more than 5% of your net worth be dictated by emotion, impulse, or unnecessary risk. Not 50%, not 20%, not even 10%. 5. It sounds tiny, almost irrelevant, but that's exactly the point. Most people think wealth is destroyed by huge disasters: a market crash, a bankruptcy, a medical event. But wealthy people understand something far more unsettling. Most fortunes are eroded slowly, quietly, through small decisions repeated for years. a spontaneous car upgrade, a rushed investment, a panic sale, a lifestyle jump after a raise. A handful of 1 to 3% mistakes every year eventually steal decades of compounding. That's why the 5% rule exists. It's a shield against erosion. The wealthy treat their net worth like a controlled ecosystem. Every dollar has a purpose. Every risk is measured. Every change is intentional. And anything that threatens to disturb the system, impulsive spending, oversized bets, emotional decisions, is capped at 5% so it can't damage the foundation. For regular investors, this rule is invisible because their financial life is built on reaction, not structure. When their income goes up, expenses rise with it. When the market falls, they panic. When friends brag about a new investment, they chase it. Every decision is a response to emotion or environment, but the wealthy operate differently. They run their finances the way a pilot flies an airplane, adjusting small levers, never allowing a single moment of turbulence to change the entire flight path. That's why wealthy people don't get rattled by volatility. Their exposure is controlled. Their emotions rarely touch their capital. Even when markets drop, they never violate the 5% limit. They never let more than a sliver of their net worth be affected by panic. This is where most people misunderstand discipline. Wealthy people aren't more disciplined because they are strong-willed. They are disciplined because they use rules that protect them from themselves. Rules like this one. The 5% rule is not about restriction, it's about acceleration. When 95% of your wealth is consistently protected from emotional damage, the remaining 5% becomes the space where you can learn, experiment, fail small, adapt fast, and grow strategically without ever threatening the compounding engine you spent years building. In the next part, we'll break down how wealthy people actually apply the 5% rule, how they divide their risk zones, and why this single framework prevents the financial chaos that traps everyone else. What makes the 5% rule so quietly powerful is that it alters the financial physics behind your net worth long before anyone around you notices. Most people think of money in terms of absolute amounts: how much they earn this month, how much they saved this year, how much they can afford right now. Wealthy people don't think that way. They think in percentages because percentages compound, while raw numbers stay stuck in the present tense. And the 5% rule is the percentage that flips the trajectory. This rule is simple on the surface. Grow your net worth by at least 5% every year, no matter what. It doesn't matter if the market is rough. It doesn't matter if your income didn't move. It doesn't matter if inflation is high. Every year, 5% up. Even if you have to drag your finances forward to make it happen, here's why this works. 5% doesn't feel overwhelming. It feels achievable. It feels like something you can do without changing your entire lifestyle. But mathematically, 5% is a pressure point. It's just enough growth to activate compounding, yet small enough that consistency is possible for decades. Most people aim for breakthroughs. I'll save big when I earn more. I'll invest more next year. I'll catch up later. Wealthy people aim for increments, small ones, constant ones that don't break. This is the exact place where the wealthy separate themselves from everyone else. They don't ask, how do I get rich fast? They ask, how do I ensure I never break the chain? Because wealth doesn't respond to intensity, it responds to continuity. Here's the hidden mechanism. 5% growth forces your net worth to rise even during years when motivation collapses. If markets fall, you contribute more. If markets rise, the market carries part of the weight. Either way, the rule holds. It creates a self-correcting system, and once your net worth crosses a certain size, that 5% stops being a challenge. It becomes automatic. 5% on $20,000 is $1,000. It takes discipline. You feel every dollar. 5% on $100,000 is $5,000. Still doable, but the market now helps. 5% on $350,000 is $1,750. One average year in the market might cover the entire target. 5% on $600,000 is $30,000. You barely lift a finger. 5% on a million is $50,000. That's the irony. The rule is hardest at the beginning and effortless at the end, but because most people never stick with it long enough, they never experience the moment when the market begins doing their job for them. And that's the real secret behind the rule. It is designed to carry you through the phase when your portfolio is too small to impress you, too fragile to motivate you, and too slow to feel meaningful. In those early years, the 5% rule is psychological armor. It prevents inconsistency. It blocks emotional decisions. It protects progress when motivation fades. By the time your portfolio becomes heavy enough to move on its own, you've built the habits and identity to sustain the growth without thinking. The wealthy don't follow the 5% rule because they have money. They have money because they follow the 5% rule. Once you begin applying the 5% rule consistently, the numbers stop being the most important part of the transformation. The real shift happens in your psychology, not the surface level motivation, the deep internal rewiring that changes how you respond to money, time, opportunity, and uncertainty. This is the phase where wealthy people quietly pull ahead, and ordinary investors don't even realize a separation has occurred. The first psychological shift is detachment from income volatility. Most people react to every change in their paycheck. They adjust their lifestyle, their spending, their goals. But the 5% rule forces you to separate your life from your future. Whether your income rises, falls, or stays flat, the rule stays the same. 5% gets deployed into assets. No excuses, no adjustments, no negotiations. This creates a mental anchor that wealthy people rely on, a stable pathway forward regardless of external noise. The second psychological shift is how you begin to perceive time. Once you're investing the same percentage every month, the question is now a good time to invest disappears. The timing doesn't matter. The habit does. This is exactly how wealthy people think. They respect the calendar more than the headlines. The act of investing becomes detached from emotion entirely. You don't wait for motivation. You don't wait for dips. You don't wait for perfect conditions. You deploy. The rule removes hesitation. And hesitation is the single biggest enemy of compounding. The third shift is identity. You stop behaving like someone who tries to invest and start behaving like someone who is an investor. That sounds small, but it's the most powerful upgrade in long-term wealth building. When investing becomes identity-driven rather than motivation-driven, it becomes nearly impossible to break the habit. That's why wealthy individuals rarely stop building assets. Their systems anchor who they are, not how they feel. And then comes the most underrated psychological shift of all. Your relationship with risk transforms. People who don't follow a consistent system fear risk because their decisions are random and emotional. But the 5% rule gives you a predictable runway. You're not risking everything, you're allocating a controlled percentage. Over time, this gives you the courage to stay the course during downturns, to invest when others panic, and to maintain conviction even when the headlines scream uncertainty. This is the point where wealthy people truly separate from everyone else. When markets fall, they continue deploying 5%. When markets rise, they continue deploying 5%. When the world goes sideways, they continue deploying 5%. The consistency becomes a shield, a stabilizer, a compass, and finally, the 5% rule changes how you view opportunity. Instead of waiting for the perfect moment, the mythical right time most people never find, you accumulate exposure every single month. This builds a foundation that positions you for cycles rather than single events. Wealthy people don't bet on moments, they accumulate the landscape, and the 5% rule quietly makes you one of them. In this stage, you realize why the rule is almost invisible to the average person. It doesn't feel dramatic. It doesn't feel exciting. It doesn't look like a breakthrough. And yet, it's exactly the type of mechanism that rewires your financial trajectory without drawing attention to itself. Most people seek wealth emotionally. Wealthy people follow systems. The 5% rule is the system that ensures you stop relying on willpower and start relying on inevitability. If you follow the 5% rule long enough, something remarkable happens. Your wealth stops feeling fragile. It stops feeling like something that could collapse from one mistake. It stops feeling uncertain. Instead, it becomes structural, like a building with foundations so deep that storms barely shake it. This is the long term impact most people never experience because they never build a system strong enough to protect compounding over decades. But once the 5% rule is part of your financial identity, you enter a different category of investor entirely. Here's the first transformation: your net worth becomes predictable. Not the daily chart, the trajectory. The long term line becomes clear and sharply positive because you've eliminated the biggest threat to compounding: uncontrolled spending. The second transformation is stability. Your lifestyle stops swinging wildly with your emotions, your income, or your circumstances. You live below your means naturally, not because you're forcing yourself to, but because you've created a boundary that prevents lifestyle creep before it starts. The third transformation is acceleration. The 5% rule ensures that your base remains intact long enough for compounding to do what it does best. Convert consistency into exponential growth. The longer your base remains untouched, the more violently the curve rises later. This is why wealthy people seem lucky. They're not. They're protected. The fourth transformation is optionality, the hidden currency of the rich. Because your base is protected, you can change jobs without panic, take risks without destroying your progress, invest aggressively when markets drop, save at a high rate without feeling deprived, make long-term plans without fear. Optionality is freedom, and the 5% rule creates it. And the final transformation is identity. You become someone who builds instead of reacts, someone who protects instead of consumes, someone who plans instead of improvises, someone whose wealth compounds because their behavior compounds. The 5% rule is not about restriction, it's about protection, it's about structure, it's about staying in the game long enough for the math to shift permanently in your favor. Wealthy people don't follow this rule because they have money. They have money because they follow this rule.